Rain tapped softly against the windows of a quiet neighborhood cafe in Seattle. As Ethan Parker wrapped his hands around a warm cup of coffee, it had been a long day, the kind that leaves your mind heavy and your shoulders tired. Outside, the evening sky had already turned dark, and most people hurried past the cafe without stopping. Ethan worked long hours as a delivery driver. His life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He believed in small things, holding doors for strangers, helping someone carry groceries, offering a smile when the world felt cold. That night, as he prepared to leave the cafe, he noticed someone standing near the entrance. The man looked nervous. His clothes were damp from the rain, his hair messy, and his eyes scanned the street as if he was searching for something or someone. He stepped toward Ethan. "Hey, I'm really sorry to bother you," the stranger said, his voice shaky. "My phone died, and I need to make an urgent call. Could I please use yours for just a minute?" Most people would hesitate. After all, giving your phone to a stranger wasn't exactly the safest choice. But Ethan looked at the man's face. There was something real in his expression. Desperation, maybe, or fear. Ethan sighed softly and pulled his phone from his pocket. "Sure," he said. "Just make it quick." Relief washed over the stranger's face instantly. "Thank you. Seriously. Thank you." He stepped a few feet away and quickly dialed a number. Ethan couldn't hear the conversation clearly, only fragments. "I'm safe. Yes. I found someone. Don't worry." The call lasted less than a minute. When the man returned the phone, his hands trembled slightly. "You have no idea how much this helped," he said. "I won't forget this." Ethan shrugged. "It's just a phone call." The stranger gave a grateful nod before quickly disappearing into the rainy night. Ethan didn't think much about it. To him, it was just another small act of kindness, the kind that usually fades into the background of everyday life. He finished his coffee, drove home, and settled into the quiet comfort of his apartment. The night passed peacefully. But the next morning, everything changed. Around 8 a.m., a loud knock echoed through Ethan's apartment. He frowned and walked to the door. Another knock. Louder this time. When Ethan opened the door, his heart nearly stopped. 2 police officers stood on his doorstep. "Mr. Ethan Parker?" One of them asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, that's me." The officer looked down at a small notebook before meeting Ethan's eyes again. "We need to ask you a few questions," he said calmly. "It's about a phone call that was made from your number last night." Ethan's stomach tightened. Suddenly, the memory of the nervous stranger in the rain flashed through his mind. He had only tried to help. But now, police were standing at his door, and Ethan had no idea why. Ethan felt his chest tighten as the 2 officers stood quietly in the hallway outside his apartment. "Can we come in?" The taller officer asked politely. Ethan stepped aside. "Yeah, sure." They walked into the small living room while Ethan's mind raced. His thoughts kept returning to the stranger from the cafe. What could that phone call possibly have to do with the police? The shorter officer pulled out a small notebook. "Mr. Parker," he said calmly, "last night around 7:42 p.m., a call was placed from your phone to a number connected to an ongoing police investigation." Ethan blinked in confusion. "Investigation?" "Yes." Ethan quickly raised his hand slightly, nervous but honest. "Look, I think I know what this is about. A guy asked to use my phone outside a cafe. His phone was dead. I just let him make a quick call." The officers exchanged a glance. "Can you describe him?" The tall officer asked. Ethan tried to remember. He was maybe mid-30s. Dark hair, soaked from the rain. He looked really stressed. Said he needed to call someone urgently. "Did he tell you his name?" "No." "Did he say who he was calling?" "No." I couldn't hear much. He stepped away. The officers wrote down every detail carefully. Ethan's stomach twisted with anxiety. "Am I in trouble?" he finally asked. The taller officer shook his head immediately. "No, you're not in trouble." Ethan exhaled slowly, but the tension in the room remained. "So, what's going on?" he asked. The shorter officer looked at him seriously. "That phone call was made to a woman. who had reported her husband missing earlier that day. Ethan frowned. Missing? Yes. Ethan leaned back against the couch. So the guy I helped, he's missing. The officers exchanged another glance. No, the tall officer said quietly. He wasn't missing. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. Then what is this about? The officer paused before answering. That man is actually an important witness in a serious case. Ethan's confusion deepened. What kind of case? The officer hesitated, then spoke carefully. A kidnapping investigation. The word hit the room like thunder. Ethan's heart pounded. Kidnapping. Yes. Suddenly, Ethan remembered how nervous the stranger had looked. The way he kept checking the street. What did he say on the phone? Ethan asked. We are not completely sure yet, the officer replied. But the call he made may have helped someone. Ethan swallowed. So, why are you here? The tall officer gave him a small reassuring smile. Because that phone call may have been the only reason someone is alive today. Ethan stared at them in stunned silence. All he had done was lend a stranger his phone. But somehow, that tiny act of kindness had become part of something much bigger. And Ethan was about to learn just how big. For a long moment, Ethan sat silently on his couch, trying to process everything the officers had told him. Kidnapping. Witness. A phone call that might have saved someone's life. It felt unreal. The taller officer closed his notebook and looked at Ethan kindly. Mr. Parker, the man who used your phone contacted someone who helped us locate a victim late last night. Ethan blinked. A victim? Yes. Ethan leaned forward. Wait, you mean someone was actually kidnapped? The officer nodded slowly. A teenage girl. Ethan felt his stomach drop. She was taken from a parking lot yesterday afternoon. The officer explained. We had very few leads. The shorter officer continued. But around 8 p.m., we received a call from the victim's mother saying someone had just contacted her. Ethan's mind started connecting the pieces. The stranger. Exactly. The officer nodded. He told her where the girl was being held. Ethan's heart pounded faster. And, did you find her? Both officers smiled slightly. Yes. Relief washed over Ethan. She's safe. Ethan leaned back, letting out a long breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That's incredible. But there's more, the tall officer said. Ethan looked up again. The man who used your phone didn't want to reveal his location. The officer continued. But the number he called from, your phone, helped us trace the time and area. Ethan slowly understood. So, the call helped you find them? Exactly. The officers stood to leave. You didn't just lend someone a phone last night, the officer said. You unknowingly helped save a life. Ethan sat there quietly after they left. The apartment felt strangely silent. Just hours earlier, he had thought that moment outside the cafe meant nothing. Just a small act. A stranger. A quick phone call. Now he realized something powerful. Kindness has consequences. But sometimes, those consequences are far greater than we ever imagine. And Ethan had no idea that the story wasn't over yet. Because later that evening, there would be another knock on his door. And this time, it wouldn't be the police. The day passed slowly for Ethan. Even as he drove around delivering packages, his mind kept replaying the same moment, the stranger standing in the rain, asking for help. It still felt surreal. Somehow, lending his phone for a single minute had helped rescue a kidnapped girl. By the time evening arrived, Ethan was exhausted. He had just sat down on his couch when another knock echoed through the apartment. His heart jumped slightly. For a moment, he wondered if the police had returned. Ethan walked to the door and opened it. But this time, the people standing outside were different. A woman stood there with red, tired eyes, holding the hand of a teenage girl. Behind them stood the same police officer Ethan had spoken to earlier that morning. Mr. Parker, the officer said gently, there's someone here who wanted to meet you. The woman stepped forward. Before Ethan could say anything, tears filled her eyes. You're Ethan? She asked softly. Yes. Suddenly, she pulled him into a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan froze in surprise. "For what?" The woman stepped back and placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "This is my daughter, Lily." The teenage girl gave a shy smile. "She's alive because of you." Ethan shook his head immediately. "No, I didn't do anything." But the officer spoke up. "The witness used your phone to call Lily's mother and tell her where she was being held. Without that call, we might not have found her in time." Lily looked up at Ethan with grateful eyes. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said quietly. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He had no words. Because sometimes, the smallest act can create the biggest impact. And Ethan was beginning to understand that kindness travels farther than we ever expect. For a few seconds, none of them spoke. Ethan looked at Lily, standing quietly beside her mother. She seemed strong, but there was still a trace of fear in her eyes, the kind that comes from going through something no one should ever experience. Yet she was smiling, alive, safe, and somehow, Ethan had been a small part of that. Lily's mother wiped a tear from her cheek. "I spent hours yesterday thinking I might never see my daughter again," she said softly. "Then my phone rang, and a stranger told me where she was." Her voice trembled. "That stranger used your phone." Ethan shook his head again, still overwhelmed. "I didn't even know what was happening," he said quietly. "That doesn't matter," the police officer replied. "What matters is that when someone needed help, you didn't hesitate." Lily stepped forward. In her hands was a small folded note. "I made this for you," she said. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside, written in careful handwriting, were simple words. "Your kindness saved my life." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. Because in a world that often feels rushed and indifferent, moments like this remind us of something powerful. Kindness matters. Not because we expect recognition, not because we know what the outcome will be, but because sometimes a simple decision to help someone can ripple outward in ways we never imagine. A phone call, 1 minute of trust, one stranger helping another, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a life was saved. As Lily and her mother prepared to leave, Ethan stood quietly in the doorway. Before getting into their car, Lily turned back and waved. Ethan waved back with a soft smile. Later that night, as he sat by the window watching the city lights flicker in the distance, he thought about something. The world often talks about heroes as if they wear uniforms or capes. But sometimes, a hero is simply someone who says yes when a stranger asks for help. And that small moment of kindness can change everything.